Hi guys, and welcome to my channel, Plant-Based Sweetheart. My name is Mary, and today I'm going to give you guys 5 tips on how to get through a potato challenge. If you've been watching, then you know that I did it, well, I tried to do it for 30 days. That's why I call it a challenge, not a diet, because it was a freaking challenge. And I didn't make it to 30 days, honestly. I made it to day 28, and that's where I stopped. I'm satisfied with it. I mean, I really was bummed that I couldn't go any further because gagging over my food was like the last straw for me. I dealt with a lot of the hurdles, but gagging over my food was like, that's it. That was my breaking point. Anyways, so I have these 5 tips for you if you want to try the potato diet slash challenge. I hope that my tips will help you. And here they are. Let's start with number 1, the potato. So I found that if you're going to eat cold potatoes because you want it to be starch resistant, meaning when you eat a cold potato, your body doesn't store it as fat. It takes longer for it to break it down and it doesn't spike your sugar levels. So it's a little better for you. Do you have to eat them cold? No. You can eat your potatoes cold or warm. It's just an extra little step you can take, but you don't have to. So if you do plan on eating cold potatoes, rusted potatoes are not your friend, okay? They're so hard to eat cold, at least in my opinion. The best way to eat a cold potato is to go with the gold Yukon potatoes or red. Those are so easy because they're so creamy. Unlike the rusted potato, it's so dry, especially if you accidentally overcook it like I did so many times. It was like eating cardboard, like no fun at all. So that's my first tip. Go with gold and red potatoes. I ended up towards the middle of my challenge doing more gold and red potatoes just because they were creamy. I was so over rusted potatoes. So you might want to try that. And my second tip is boiling them, okay? So if you're going to put them in the oven and you want them to come out crispy, then you want to boil them halfway, not all the way, because then you won't be able to cut them in slices or anything because they'll be too mushy. So halfway, cook them halfway, like a good 30 minutes, depending on the size of your potato. Then when you take them out, you can dice them, cut them however you want, and then put them in your oven, and they will come out nice and crispy. And tip number 3 is air fryer, you guys. Air fryer. I said oven in tip number 2 because I was saving for tip number 3. Go get an air fryer. It will be your best friend, okay? If it wasn't for my air fryer, I wouldn't have been able to make it. Like I just wouldn't. Because I love crispy. If you're like me and you love crispy food, then the air fryer is going to be your best friend. I couldn't have it for lunch because there's no air fryer at work. So that's why lunch was always so miserable for me, but I always looked forward for dinner because I knew when I come home, I have my air fryer, I've got my semi boiled potatoes, and I'm ready to rock and roll, right? So, another tip within tip number 3 is how do you get your potatoes for the seasoning to stick to the potatoes? Either lemon juice, or what I liked more than lemon juice was low sodium veggie broth. I would put a little bit, and then I would sprinkle the seasoning and I would let it sit for a minute so that it would soak, and then I'd put it in the air fryer. Delicious. Tip number 4. Wow, I just forgot what tip number 4 was. Ooh, salt. Okay. Some people that want to follow it to the T did salt free. Not me. I'm like, okay, I'm only eating potatoes. I cannot go salt free. I choose not to. I probably could, but I chose not to. So, what I did do is I would put 1 teaspoon of pink Himalayan salt in a bag. And my goal was to only use 1 teaspoon for the whole day. What ended up happening was that 1 teaspoon in the bag that I would put in my lunchbox lasted me the whole week because I was having steamed potatoes, so I'd sprinkle a little bit on top. That 1 teaspoon lasted me for a whole week just for lunch. So I basically had very little salt during lunch hours. However, dinner, by the way, I don't say breakfast because if you know, I do intermittent fasting. So I basically only would eat lunch and dinner. Um, Sorry, like off sub, but now back. For dinner, I would have more salt because, you know, the veggie broth had a little bit of salt, and I did use a lot of salt free seasonings so that I'd keep those salt intake very low. And I'd probably end up using dinner time maybe half a teaspoon. Sometimes, yeah, most of the time it was half a teaspoon. I'm like, oh, maybe I used a whole teaspoon for dinner. I didn't. It was more like half a teaspoon. So on the day I was using, like the whole day basically was 1 teaspoon of salt, which isn't bad at all. You know, sometimes you can't do things perfectly. At least you're doing something is better than nothing, right? And now I'm going to get to tip number 5, which is intermittent fasting, you guys. Intermittent fasting. There's so much out there about it. I love it. So, if you try this potato challenge, you know, you get to a point where you're just so over eating potatoes. And so that's where intermittent fasting makes it so much better because you've been fasting for so long. And what happens when you don't eat anything for so many hours? At that point, when you're allowed to eat something, if they gave you a seasoned rock, you're gonna freaking eat it because you're so hungry. So that's where it's perfect because you're so hungry that steamed, boring ass potato is gonna taste delicious. So, if you decide to do this potato diet, I highly recommend you incorporate intermittent fasting because you are going to hit that point where you're just so over it. So, if you're just fasting all day and just having water, you're going to get so hungry that that potato is going to be delicious and you're going to be satisfied and you can get through it. At least that's how I got through it. So I hope my tips helped you guys. So if you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Subscribe, like, share, all that good stuff. And I will talk to you soon.